everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of What You Don't See About Me as a Parent. Today feels different. It feels heavier, but also lighter. It feels like closing a chapter while knowing the story isn't really finished at all. For the past 9 episodes, I've let you step behind the curtain of my life, my home, my classroom, my motherhood. And today, as we bring this series to a close, I want to tie it all together under the title that has carried us from the very beginning. What you don't see about me as a parent. Because that's what this has all been about, hasn't it? Revealing what's unseen, giving words to what often goes unspoken, naming the quiet resilience, the hidden tears, the silent victories that no one claps for, the exhaustion that never makes it into the glossy photos on social media, but also the joy that rises in the middle of the storm when no one else can understand why. When I started this series, I didn't set out to make myself the center of the story. I set out to speak for every parent who has walked a path like mine. Parents raising children with additional needs, parents who have sat in countless waiting rooms, parents who have wrestled with school meetings that left them drained, parents who have carried the guilt of getting it wrong, and parents who have also carried the pride of seeing their child do something the world said they would never do. But here's the truth. The title itself, What You Don't See About Me as a Parent, it's not just about me. It's about you too. It's about the thousands of hidden lives that are walking this same journey in bedrooms, kitchens, hospital corridors, classrooms, and playgrounds all over the world. What you don't see about me as a parent is that I have fought battles no one applauded. I have sat through nights of silence that felt like they would never end. I have tried to explain my child to a world that didn't want to listen. I've lost friends. I've lost energy. I've lost pieces of myself. And yet, I have gained courage I didn't know existed. What you don't see about me as a parent is that I've cried in bathrooms so that my children wouldn't see me fall apart. I've celebrated victories so small they would look invisible to anyone else. But for me, they were mountains moved. I've prayed prayers that felt like they bounced off the ceiling, and yet God answered them in ways I could never have scripted. And here's the thing. If you're listening, chances are you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because this is not just my story, it's your story. The hidden, unseen, unspoken side of parenting that no photograph, no label, no quick description can capture. We have spent time in this series talking about labels, about autism, ADHD, pre-verbal, challenging, and yes, those words serve a purpose. They unlock services. They give teachers a starting point. They sometimes provide language for us as parents when we're gasping for air. But those labels never told the full story of my child. They never told the full story of me. No label could capture the courage it took to stand my ground in a school meeting. No label could capture the grace it took to hold my child while she screamed and fought the very tools that were meant to help her. No label could capture the faith it took to keep believing that tomorrow would be different, even when yesterday broke me. And no label could ever define the lessons my children have taught me. Patience, resilience, honesty, joy, and a kind of faith that doesn't live in books but in real everyday survival. If you've listened to me long enough, you know that faith runs through every word I speak. Not the polished, perfect kind of faith that pretends life is easy, but the raw faith that has been tested in fire. The faith that whispers, God didn't design me to be defined by labels. He designed me for identity. He designed my children for destiny. He entrusted me with his story, not because I was strong enough, but because he would be my strength. When I say what you didn't see about me as a parent, what I'm really saying is what God sees about me as his child. He sees my tears. He sees my triumphs. He sees the nights I almost gave up and the mornings I choose to rise again. And he sees the same in you. So as we start this final episode, here's my invitation. Don't just listen to my story. Find yourself in it. Don't just nod along. Claim your own unseen strength. Don't just let these 10 episodes be about my family. Let them be a mirror that shows you what you've carried, what you have endured, and what you have overcome. But whether your child has a diagnosis or not, whether you're raising toddlers or teenagers, whether you're surrounded by support or carrying it all alone, you are a parent with a story the world doesn't see. And today, I want us to close this series by saying together, our hidden stories matter. This finale is not the end, it's a launching pad. I want to remind you that you are not invisible. Your child is not invisible. Your parenting is not invisible. What the world doesn't see, God sees. What the world doesn't value, heaven values. What the world overlooks, heaven magnifies. And so in this episode, I'm going to weave together everything we have touched before. The weight of labels, the beauty of small steps, the courage of boundaries, the cost of exhaustion, the joy of parenting wins, the lessons our children teach us, and the resilience we build day by day. This isn't just a recap. It's a culmination, a declaration that everything we have endured, everything we have learned, everything we've shared, it all leads here to a parenthood that is unseen but unshakable. When we talk about parenting children with additional needs, labels are everywhere. Some arrive with clinical authority, autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, sensory processing difficulties. Others sneak in through casual conversation, difficult, stubborn, attention seeking, high maintenance, and sometimes without even realizing it, we as parents create our own picky eater, shy one, clingy child, pre-verbal. The truth is, labels are a double-edged sword. On one side, they provide clarity. They give us a language when we are desperate for answers. They open doors for services, therapies, and schools that we otherwise couldn't access. They help us explain to extended family and professionals that what we are experiencing isn't just bad parenting or a phase. A diagnosis for many families is the first moment they finally feel seen. But the other side of that sword cuts deep. Labels can shrink our children down to a single word, a single trait, a single category. And once a label is applied, it is hard to peel off. I remember sitting in a meeting where professionals described a child as low functioning. That was it. 2 words. As though an entire life could be summarized in a phrase. Not one mention of the child's laughter. their love for puzzles, their remarkable ability to notice details the rest of us miss, just low functioning. And here's the problem. When labels dominate the conversation, people stop seeing the child. Teachers may lower their expectations. Peers may avoid engaging. Family members may quietly pity instead of participate. Even strangers in the supermarket will glance over and think they know the whole story because of a single word. But no label, no matter how clinical or descriptive, can ever capture the fullness of a human soul. It's not just professionals who use labels. Sometimes we as parents slip into it too, out of exhaustion, out of habit, or even out of protection. We might say, she's preverbal instead of she communicates differently. We might say he's difficult instead of he's struggling right now. We might tell others she won't manage that instead of we're working on it together. And though we don't mean harm, these small phrases can cement mindsets in others and in ourselves. Think about it. If every introduction of your child starts with what they can't do, eventually that becomes the first lens through which everyone views them. It becomes harder for people to imagine the possibilities, to recognize the growth, or to celebrate the uniqueness. Labels don't just attach to children, they attach to us as parents too. The special needs parent, the overprotective parent, the difficult parent in school meetings, the warrior mom. Some of these titles feel empowering for a while, but they can also become heavy chains. Because what happens when the days you don't feel like a warrior? What happens when exhaustion outweighs fight? Or when tears fall more than courage rises? Does that make you less of a parent? Of course not. Yet labels like these can pressure us into performing a version of strength that doesn't leave space for our humanity. The most dangerous labels are the ones we start to believe ourselves. When a report says your child has significant limitations, part of you may quietly agree and stop dreaming bigger. When schools highlight deficits more than strength, part of you may lower your expectations without realizing it. When society praises resilience but ignores exhaustion, part of you may stop admitting that you are tired. This internalization is subtle, but it's real. And if we are not careful, labels can shape not only how others see our children, but how we see them, and even how we see ourselves. So here's the shift I've learned to make. Labels may describe, but they should never define. A diagnosis is information, not identity. A report is a snapshot, not the full story. A behavior is communication, not character. When I keep that perspective, I can use labels as tools, but I refuse to let them become cages. Because here's the truth. Labels might open doors, but they can also close hearts. And I have made a decision in my parenting and teaching journey. I will not allow a label to close the door on hope, on potential, on growth, on faith. When I feel the pressure of labels pressing down, I come back to what God says and looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16, verse 7. This world may see a diagnosis, but God sees destiny. The world may see limitation, but God sees possibility. The world may see a child with needs, but God sees a child with purpose. And that perspective doesn't just change how I see my daughter. It changes how I see myself. Because if he sees beyond my labels, tired, overwhelmed, struggling, then I can trust that he sees strength, resilience, and faith rising in me even when I don't feel it. The label might be the first thing professionals write down, but it should never be the last thing we see. The challenge and the privilege of parenting and teaching children with needs is learning to see the whole child, not just the diagnosis. When I meet a child, the paperwork often comes first. The reports, the assessments, the recommendations. Pages filled with what the child struggles with, deficits, delays, limitations. But here's the danger. If you only ever look at the paperwork, you miss the person. You miss the sparkle in their eyes when they hear a favorite song. You miss the way they line up toys with artistic precision. You miss the humor in their one-liners, the stubborn determination that one day will serve them as leadership, the creativity that bursts out in unexpected places. To see beyond the diagnosis means retraining our eyes, not to ignore the challenges, those are real, but to refuse to let them be the whole picture. For parents, this is deeply personal. You see your child's quirks, talents, preferences, things no professional could ever capture. And sometimes you are the only one in the room willing to say, she's more than this report. He's more than these scores. It's not about denying the difficulties. It's about insisting that the world doesn't stop here. And when you speak up in meetings, when you remind teachers and therapists that your child is more than a case file, you're not being difficult. You're being prophetic. You're calling people to see a fuller version of who your child is becoming. For teachers, the same principle applies. Every behavior tells a story, but it's not the whole story. The child who refuses to write may have a brilliant mind for storytelling. The one who struggles to sit still may notice details that others overlook. If we only focus on managing behaviors, we miss the person behind them. We forget that the goal isn't simply compliance, it's connection. And when I work with students, I try to pause and ask myself, what else do I see beyond the meltdown, beyond the delay, beyond the report? What beauty, what talent, what spark is hidden there, waiting for recognition? One of the greatest dangers of overfocusing on labels is invisibility. Children can become invisible in plain sight, seen for what they lack, but not for who they are. And invisibility is dangerous because when children aren't truly seen, they can begin to believe they don't matter. They withdraw. They stop trying. They silence themselves. That's why our role as parents and teachers is sacred. To make sure our children are never invisible, to let them know they are seen, valued, and celebrated, not for ticking boxes, but for being who they are. Seeing beyond the diagnosis isn't just a mindset shift, it's a faith shift. Because if God looks at the heart, then every time we choose to see beyond our report, we are aligning ourselves with heaven's perspective. We're choosing to agree with what God says instead of what paperwork limits. And when we parent, teach, or advocate from that place, our children feel it. They sense the difference. They know when they are loved as they are, not managed as a diagnosis. So, how do we do this in the day to day? The first thing is to name the child first. Always say, this is Sarah, who has autism. Never the autistic child. Identity first, diagnosis second. Next is to notice their strengths out loud. Tell the teacher, the therapist, the sibling, not just what's hard, but what's brilliant. Then create space for quirks. If your child loves dinosaurs, let dinosaurs show up in the learning. If they love heart, let heart be their way of processing. And then challenge deficit language. If a report says limited imagination, you have seen your child create whole worlds in play, speak up. And last but not least, celebrate every spark. Even when progress is slow, remind yourself and others this is growth, this is life, this is worth praising. Staying beyond the diagnosis isn't about ignoring reality. It's about refusing to let reality be reduced to a single word. It's about remembering that our children are not conditions to be managed, but people to be loved, nurtured, and believed in. And when we do that, something extraordinary happens. The world begins to see what we see. One of the hardest truths I had to accept as a parent was this. I thought I was the teacher, but in many ways, my child became the one teaching me. Yes, I guide her. I set boundaries. I help her navigate the world. But at the same time, through her life, her struggles, her quirks, her victories, I have been shaped into a different person. I am more patient than I had ever thought possible. I have learned to laugh at the things others overlook. I have been forced to find strength I didn't know I had. Our children are not only here to be taught, they are here to teach us. Before autism came into my life, I thought patience meant waiting in line at the bank without sighing. Now I know patience is far deeper. It is the willingness to sit through the 15th meltdown of the week and still wake up the next morning ready to try again. It is learning that growth doesn't follow your timeline. Milestone that seems small to others, a word spoken, a shoe tied, a new food tasted, might take years. And patience is holding the space until it happens without giving up. I used to pray for patience as though it was a gift God would drop into my lap. Now I know patience is mercy, and my child has been my trainer. She stretched me, challenged me, and sometimes broke me down, but each time I rebuild stronger. I'll never forget the day my daughter laughed uncontrollable because a bubble floated past her hand. Just a bubble. Something so ordinary that most people wouldn't give a second thought. But in her eyes, it was magic. And in that moment, I realized I had been rushing through life, chasing big achievements, while God was teaching me through her to notice the small. Joy doesn't have to wait for the promotion, the perfect exam result, or the big holiday. Joy can be found in a bubble, in a favorite snack, in a 5-second hug. My daughter taught me that joy isn't about circumstances. It's about seeing beauty where others see nothing. Children on the spectrum often don't play social games. They don't flatter to get ahead. They don't soften their words to make people comfortable. Sometimes that brutal honesty has embarrassed me in public. But over time, I realized this honesty is a gift. In a world full of masks, my daughter taught me how refreshing it is to be direct. She showed me that love doesn't mean pretending. It means being real. even when it's messy. Her honesty challenged me to stop pretending in my own life, to stop saying I'm fine when I'm broken, to stop hiding behind smiles when I need help. In teaching me honesty, she gave me freedom. Every meltdown could have been the end of progress. Every setback could have been the end of hope. But time after time, my daughter bounced back. Sometimes we think resilience is never failing, but resilience is rising again after every fall. And that's exactly what our children do. I've watched her learn to regulate after storms that seemed impossible. I've seen her try again after failures that could crush adults. And every time she rises, I feel my own strength rise too. Her resilience became my mirror. If she can keep going, so can I. I never wanted to be that parent, the one writing long emails, asking hard questions, pushing back against systems, but my child forced me into it. Not because I wanted to fight, but because she deserved a voice. Through her, I learned that advocacy is not aggression. Advocacy is love in action. It is standing up when others sit down. It is speaking truth when silence is easier. And in that fight, I've discovered my own voice. I became stronger, braver, more confident. I became the kind of person I never imagined myself to be. And it was my child who trained me in it. It's not just me who have learned. Her siblings, Sean and Siobhan, have been reshaped too. Sean learned that defending his sister in public was not weakness but strength. The first time he stood between her and mocking classmates, I saw something shift in him. He realized advocacy doesn't always look like a speech. And sometimes it looks like standing quietly but firmly beside someone you love. Siobhan learned empathy in ways far beyond her years. I remember her masking her own emotions because she didn't want to add to the pressure when things were already chaotic at home. She grew a compassion that many adults never find, an ability to sense when someone else is struggling, even if they don't say a word. These lessons remind me that this journey isn't just shaping one child, it is shaping an entire family. Every lesson my children have taught me points me back to God. Patience reminds me of His patience with me. Joy in the small things reflects His reminder to consider the lilies. Honesty mirrors His call to truth. Resilience echoes His promise to rise again. Advocacy is His justice flowing through us. So when I look at my children, I don't just see challenges. I see teachers. I see mirrors. I see messengers of God's character. Parents, if you have ever felt weak, remember this. Your child has been training you in strength. If you have ever felt lost, know that they are teaching you new ways to see. If you have ever wondered if you are growing, pause and notice you are not the same person you were when this journey began. Because every meltdown, every small win, every honest word, every act of resilience has been a classroom, and your child has been the teacher.